What's up, dudes? I'm the Universe, your master to the geeky and nerdy, and welcome to a new episode. And today I thought we would talk about Sandman, Preludes and Nocturnes by Neil Gaiman. This is actually the very first Sandman comic I've ever read. Yeah, I heard about Neil Gaiman before when I was growing up. I do think I had a friend when I was growing up because I kind of grew up in like a small group of comic readers. I think I had a friend who was a fan of Sandman. Um, but I haven't officially read a Sandman comic up until Sandman Preludes and Nocturnes, which is actually very good because when this starts out, it starts out with Sandman's origin story talking about Sandy Hawkins, the original Sandman, talking about the second Sandman that took off after him. And then it goes into where basically the Sandman of this time is now. So, as for being basically a man that has a sweep control gun to a man that can control sand itself to actually being a god and a lord of dreams. It's actually pretty useful. So this video might be short. I don't know. I'm just going to talk about basically the comic as a whole and go over the different stories as best as I can. So, basically, when the story starts out, we're introduced to Sandman. Neil Gaiman talks about who the Lord of Dreams is and everything. And this is definitely a DC Vertigo book because during the entire thing, his Sandman joins up with a lot of DC Vertigo characters like John Constantine, Etrigan, the Ryman Demon, even frickin' Jonathan Crane. There's even a nod to Sabrina and the EC horror witch in this. And dear God, don't think that that is a bad thing because it is not. I noticed that Neil really liked to put on the performance of a lot of like words and a lot of good phrases and a lot of unique things that actually sound like bigger than they're supposed to be. It's not a trope. That's what we have comic tropes here on YouTube for. But it basically is a thing that I noticed while reading through his thing is like he likes to basically focus on like speeches and very important words for the different characters to use throughout this comic. And I think this has it talks about the library, yeah. But this is the first 12. No, well, yes, but I don't know how many things or how many that are in this. Can you believe that he wrote Coraline? I never knew that Coraline was a comic book. I just assumed it was a movie that was made by Tim Burton. That was one of my favorites. And especially how it gets even more creepier towards the ending. So Neil, we have a lot of talking to do, baby. We got a lot of talking to do. I love how though it's all very much interesting. Like here's where he talked to Cain and Abel. No, not joking. They even recognized them as Cain and Abel. I was like, the Cain and Abel from Biblical More? This is what I'm talking about with Sabrina and the old EC horror witch. Very nice. I don't know who the one in the middle is supposed to be. I can recognize the old EC witch and Sabrina, but yeah. And a lot of people may be going, Sabrina the Teenage Witch? It's like, not the Sabrina that we know. This is a different Sabrina. He meets John Constantine, like I said. There's John Constantine that he ends up meeting with. He even meets up with let me get to it here so you guys know what I'm talking about. But he even meets up with, after he meets up with John Constantine, he meets up with the friends of John Constantine, not just Etrigan the Demon, but the angel Gabriel from Vertigo, from Hellblazer. If you remember Gabriel, he basically is a I'm trying to remember the movie with Keanu Reeves. It's basically a transgendered male that essentially has like unique powers and whatnot. So I love the art in this. So the art is like probably the best part about this. Right here, you can go back for a minute so you can really understand it. Right here, the 2-page spread, I love this. Look at this. And it's the same image I used for the thumbnail. Look at this. This is awesome. Like, you just get the feeling and aspect of hell just all around you. I don't see any, like, DC, like, characters in this. You would think that you would, like, somebody that you would recognize, but No, they just put like basically like weird and obscure characters. So it's still cool, it's still unique. You know, I thought I would see like Johnny's Thunderbolt in here, but no. There's a unique story in this where he teamed up with, of all people, because Swamp Thing teamed up, had the Justice League in one of his comics. And one of the funniest things is that they talk about, and I didn't even realize it for the longest time, they talked about Scott Free, Mr. Miracle. I was like, that's supposed to be Scott? Because all of a sudden it goes from like this dark, oppressing story to granny goodness and everything. And I'm like, who is this supposed to be? Until I realized it was the origin of Scott Free. Eventually, I probably will check out Tom King's Mr. Miracle run, maybe. But one of the better stories not had Sandman in it at all, and it's called 24 Hours, which is about one of the characters that Sandman torments in the original run wants somebody that he basically turned completely insane. And all that he does in it is that he sits in a restaurant, he observes people, he just has a gay old time with them until you learn that he does a lot of darker things to them. He mind manipulates them, he tricks them, he basically does a lot of things to them. But also, tell me you don't see what I see. Tell me that you do not see a Donald Trump in this. I'm serious. That's all I could think of when I saw it. I'm like, Trump? Like, Donald? Really? And the funny thing is, I watched a Linkara video earlier today as I'm recording this, where basically he made a reference to Donald Trump from a Star Trek comic, and I'm like, okay, like that's interesting. But it gets even more interesting um, because I didn't realize it. I had to read this page 3 times in order to know what was going on. Just people having sex behind the counter. And the weirdest part is, it's to the Addams Family theme. So, I'm just pointing it out. So, I just really enjoyed it. We even, at the end of it, meet Sandman's sister, who is Death. Yes, seriously, Death. Because when she goes around, she's immediately killing people off. She's meeting them with the spirit world entity, so to speak. And she recognizes them all by name, and then they end up dying and meeting her. And even when she walks up to people, she goes, "Hi, remember me?" And they're like, "Yes, I know what this means." Would have been funnier if Death just went to them and said, "Nah, I'm just screwing with you. I don't want to kill you. You just forgot to pay your taxes." But again, the artist in this, and especially Neil Gaiman himself, can prove like he can write different stories that's just not showing like what Sandman can do in his powers and capabilities, but also showing us like the world that he exists in. Like he is not just this one character that's just gonna deal with, like Justice League level threats. He deals with even weirder stuff than the Justice League does. Um, so I remember I read one graphic novel from my library. I forget what it was called, where he was dealing with a lot of other things outside of his own dimension and meeting a lot of different other Sandmans from the other dimensions as well. So he doesn't deal with just the usual pick and swat. But you have Dream a little Dream with Me with John Constantine, which is one of my favorites, where he and John go to the extreme height to try to save a young woman and also retrieve one of the witch's garb from them. The first story is basically just an introduction story um, to it, which is Sleep, which is just Sleep at the Just, which talks about the origin to Sandman. I love how Neil references his, the original Sandman, Sandy Hawkins. And when I talk about JOA, the Geoff Johns one, we're gonna have a little talk about Sandy and what happened to him in this. But one of the things that I love in this, and I think it's based on an original sketch of Neil Gaiman's Sandman, is that they reference the old, like, basically gas mask that he used to wear. There'd basically be like a long extended hose in front of it the like bug eyes and whatnot, which actually makes him look more like a horror character. Especially really makes him look like Marvel the Man thing, so that's really pretty funny. But I do remember seeing that image before, especially when in the later story in here, he actually does put it on and use it. So, it's very much a very good story, especially in this, and I love the different, nods and whatnot that he makes to this, especially with the song, Sweet Dreams Are Made of This, of like, really, they have references to a bunch of other Sandman stuff like Mr. Sandman, Dream Your Dream, um, a lot of songs that have to deal with sleep and whatnot. So, I mean, this is just utter hilariousness, but even in parts where like it's kind of funny, Neil Gaiman does the great thing of making it a good story that you follow in the path to, and then immediately switches over the bend and transforms it into a story that you never saw coming. Especially in the story that I like, 24 Hours, about the guy from the beginning of the story that he turns into this basically different character, and then at the end of it he screwed everybody over, manipulates them, and has them all basically just kill each other. That is really good. That I never saw coming, especially in the setup. But also, when I was reading through this, I couldn't help but feel and remember, and especially this might be Neil Gaiman too, that's doing it. It very much is reminiscent of the Twilight Zone. It's very reminiscent of the Outer Limits. It's very reminiscent to Tales of the Crypt, where basically there will be a setup of characters, and then immediately they show like some of them that get their comeuppance in the end. Um, so this is basically like his own way of basically doing the Twilight Zone and even the Outer Limits, which is something that's very very cool. But keeping the Sandman in the background, basically as the Rod Sterling of all of this, he's just along for the ride. Everybody else is just in here. Even stranger, they have Jonathan Crane in one of the stories, and I'm like, that's Scarecrow? Like, really? Wait, the Master of Terror is in this? And even though he's not a Vertigo character, well, back in the day, DC used to cross over to Vertigo, and now basically DC just owns Vertigo, so they can do whatever they want with the characters, including having John Constantine join the Justice League Dark. They reference the House of M or the House of Mystery that later John Constantine gets, but DC, there is a character that you could introduce to Justice League Dark. Hint, 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 hint. I don't know if Neil will hand over the copyrights or whatnot, but a character that would be perfect for Justice League Dark, especially what to the stuff that he deals with inside of here. This is definitely his sort of domain. Again, it would be nice to see him alongside the Justice League Dark team. I mean, you already have Alan Moore's Swamp Thing. It would make sense if they grab a hold of Sandman, even asking for some copyright from Neil Gaiman in order to put him into this. But I'm just saying. So with Preludes and Nocturnes, a good volume to read, especially through the, I don't know how many stories it were, 6 or something. Honestly, yeah, this is actually a very good Sandman comic, and it's a very good one that I recommend to people, especially if you don't know nothing about Sandman. It introduces you to who this character is, why he can do what he do, all his powers, and then takes you on for the ride. What he's doing here, what is his project, and how is he going to deal with the circumstances that he's coming up against. So again, yeah, I really recommend reading Preludes and Nocturnes. If anybody knows any other like really good Sandman stories, be sure to tell me in the comments below. But anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Be sure to circulate my links around and videos around to other media sites. You can be sure to, follow me at Twitter and whatnot. And it's the way universe saying, signing out saying that even though there are things that we do not understand, just remember, there is always a Sandman to come around. And hopefully, he will not haunt your dreams tonight. Until next time, Mr. Sandman can dream us a dream.